Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you all here and especially to see so much interest. We have a packed room, and also for all of you taking time out of what is otherwise an incredibly impactful, packed agenda. So thank you for spending a few minutes with us today. My name is Allison Carlson. I'm the Executive Vice President at Foreign Policy. We are a US-based research and media organization. You may know Foreign Policy Magazine. And I'm here with colleague Johan Bernard. This session is going to be a readout of a closed-door simulation that was held yesterday. That was produced by our team at FP Analytics, many of whom my colleagues are in the room right now as well. This simulation was really focused on identifying constructive solutions to what is a collective challenge. Simulations and FP peace games are war games flipped on their heads. They're opportunities to bring together different stakeholders from governments, from civil societies, the private sector, and other groups to really game out strategies for collective challenges. Unlike, and as I was mentioning yesterday, unlike war games, which are traditionally devoted to annihilating your adversary, these are actually constructive, and the goals are to identify real ways to work better and more effectively together. Foreign Policy has been producing peace games and crisis simulations now for a little over a decade. And we design them so that they can be either closed door or open to a public forum. But it is a real opportunity to bring together those who are working on the forefront of issues, either policy experts or those who are working on regulations, standards, operators, practitioners, and others to really bring to bear their expertise on specific issues and think through what are these challenges and what are the clear and distinct roles, responsibilities that each party can bring to bear to address these challenges. And so, when we are thinking about the Paris Peace Forum and in dialogue with Jerome and others who are part of the Net Zero Space Initiative, we thought, what a perfect opportunity to bring together stakeholders to really game out just that. What are some of the solutions and strategies as they relate to space, and specifically sustainability? Because as we know now, there are over 6,700 satellites in orbit over the next decade. It's anticipated that could be 70 to 100,000. And that is increasing incredible opportunity as far as navigation, humanitarian relief, climate and weather monitoring, and so many other opportunities for commerce, et cetera. But that increasing presence and activity in space also presents challenges, of course, as there is greater activity there and more participants from governments, from non-state actors, from the private sector, and others. And so when we were thinking about this, rather than in the space domain that is relative to other domains, relatively unregulated, how can we bring together those to think through proactively how to manage that space together and think through how can frameworks that were established decades ago, the Outer Space Treaty in 1967, as an example, be looked at and analyzed. Are these fit for purpose? Are there mechanisms and protocols that really need to be updated in light of not only the actors in space, but the state of technology at play? And I think we could probably all agree, yes, there is need for that kind of assessment. And so that brought us here in collaboration with Amazon and also in collaboration with PPF and the Net Zero Space Initiative to really think through what are some of the key governance challenges, what are the roles and responsibilities of different actors, and what can be done now for greater preparedness in the space domain. And so a little bit of a long-winded introduction, but wanted to provide some context as to what was this simulation about, and what were our goals in bringing together incredible leaders from government, the private sector, and civil society to think through some of these challenges. And so now I'd like to bring Johan into the discussion now, and thank you for your partnership. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the collaboration with Amazon. And just for others in the room who may not be as familiar with Amazon and Amazon's activity in space, certainly I and others have become, increasingly familiar with and dependent on product delivery and seeing Amazon on the streets and a lot of Earth applications and presence, but some may not be familiar with Amazon's role in space, your interest, and particularly as it pertains to sustainability. So I'd like to turn to you and ask you, is this real? How is Amazon getting involved in space?
Well, thank you, Alison, for introducing the matter in a very, very clear way. And to your question, I will say yes, definitely we are a stakeholder, very involved, and I'm very pleased to report that we launched our first satellite last month, and latest reports show that they are operating in a very, very satisfactory way. So it should not come as a surprise, actually, from us, because you know that Amazon thrives to be the most customer-centric company in the world. And so we always start from the customer and work backwards, right? And in terms of the various activities, the various businesses we are in, most of them are digital. They involve electronic communications. And what we have seen is that there are still billions of households and people around the world who do not have access to proper broadband communications. So starting from this reality, it was very obvious that we had to do something about this, and this is what we did with Project Kuiper, which is Amazon's low Earth orbital satellite constellation, which is here to provide affordable broadband communication to the billions of unserved and underserved people around the world who need to access to the network to benefit from the services that a lot of various businesses provide. And this is true for obviously the population, the people, but this is also the case for SMEs, this is also for hospitals, this is also for all kind of organizations. And this is why we are involved in space-based communications today.
And so with all of that said, how does that bring you to the issue of sustainability?
Well, again, this is no surprise. And this is because Amazon is a long-term company. Everything we do is long-term driven. We think long-term. And therefore, when you start operating in space with that long-term vision, the question is immediately, well, how can I contribute to making space sustainable so that the operations that we want to have along with others out there can be sustained for a long time, and therefore the benefits on Earth can also be sustained for a long time. And this is how we came immediately to consider the sustainability dimension of this initiative, and it was kind of embedded by design in everything we did as part of Project Kuiper. And I will just name a few examples. First, obviously, we designed our satellites with that willingness to make them sustainable, and for that very reason, we made a very important decision, which was to go for autonomous propulsion for every of our satellites in order to be able to avoid issues, to maneuver them in space. And that was obviously a very important decision from a sustainability standpoint. We also had that same approach in terms of thinking that the design of our system. We will deploy more than 3,000 satellites, and they will be at 3 different layers, orbital layers, which are very low, actually, 590, 610, and 630 kilometers, in order to be able to avoid the risks and also to deorbit our satellites very quickly after the end of their operations. And this is, again, by design, a feature that preserves sustainability. And finally, obviously, sustainability has to be on our minds in everything we do during the operations of the satellites. And from that standpoint, obviously, we will, and we already do actually, share data about the positioning of our satellites in order to minimize any risk. And so that's in every dimension of how we have entered this industry. And to conclude on that question, I will say that this is also why we joined here in Paris last year the Net Zero Space Initiative. The Paris Peace Forum is a great opportunity to discuss space sustainability, and this is also why we wanted to innovate again this year and do something as part of the Paris Peace Forum with you.
And so when you were thinking about innovating, what brought you to the policy game? What sparked your interest in that specifically?
Well, again, this is no surprise given the way we approach complex issues, right? We're a data-driven company, and that means that we don't assume that things will go right. We document. We try to identify, build data that will document the fact that things will go well. And this is exactly the approach of a policy game. And here, in the particular context of space sustainability, we are conscious that obviously to make it work, you have to align a broad variety, a broad number, but also a broad variety of stakeholders, because there are states involved, but there are also agencies, UN agencies, other international agencies. There are obviously private sector stakeholders like Amazon, and therefore these drives alignment costs, and also this is happening in a context where the rules that are at play have been designed and enacted at a time when the innovation that we are carrying at the moment, like low Earth orbital satellites, satellite constellations, were nowhere in the thinking of the authorities that promoted those norms. And therefore, we wanted to test, we wanted to document what would happen if an incident took place, how the various stakeholders would react, and how they would coordinate. And this is exactly what the policy game does, actually. And this is why we were very happy when you came out with that proposal. And I want to thank you for that, and to thank also all the participants, many of them actually being in the room today. So this is great to see that we can deploy that approach in a policy environment, which is by nature quite an uncertain environment, but actually it's possible if you have the right tool, and the policy game is a right tool to kind of build the data you need to be sure that things will go well. But I will turn to you, Alison, because I'm talking about something that you know better than me, and therefore, how did you put that together for us?
Thank you for that question. And the background regarding Amazon, I do think it is an incredible tool to use to bring different stakeholders together, but also the way our simulations are designed. They start out with certainly a scene setter. What is the environment that we're in, and what are some of the complex challenges that are being faced today? And so what's the state of play, for lack of a better way to describe it? And then bringing together then 3 different moves that change the circumstances, and how they evolve, and how those actors who are party to those issues, again, different stakeholders, how could they respond as the circumstances change, and what tools, what mechanisms can be leveraged but also what gaps are exposed as the actors are trying and participants are responding to the changing circumstances. And I would also like to thank all of those who participated who are in the room today as well. What's absolutely fascinating, I think, about these simulations and these policy games is not only are the outcomes a reflection of the expertise in the room, but they're really, a reflection of the ability for those individuals to work together. And it creates an opportunity to deepen those working relationships. And so I think they're really productive in those ways. And the way the simulations are designed, they, in each move, really attempt to elicit specific questions about governance, protocols, standards that the participants are grappling with. That sounds, a little amorphous, so I'd like to share a short video with all of you from our simulation yesterday, which is the scene setter. So apologies for the redundancy for those who were in the room yesterday, but I would like to play that now so you can get a little bit of a flavor of how these are designed.
Maneuvering towards space sustainability, present day.
And liftoff.
Space activities are accelerating at an unprecedented pace, ushering in new opportunities in multiple sectors of society. Simultaneously, they pose new global challenges to space governance, space sustainability, and the safety and security of space operations. In the wake of close encounters and collisions, such as the 2009 collision between Iridium and Cosmos 2251, space actors are recognizing the imminent risks posed by the growing number of active objects and inactive debris in space. In the last 2 years alone, there has been a significant increase in the number of commercial satellites, with a majority located in the low Earth orbit called LEO. Of over 6,700 operational satellites, 88% are LEO, and of these, 84% are used for commercial purposes. The next decade could see the launch of 70,000 to 100,000 more satellites, making space sustainability a critical issue. There are currently over 30,000 pieces of tracked space debris larger than 10 centimeters. A single piece of 10-centimeter debris could destroy an entire satellite upon collision, costing millions in damages and posing a potential threat to human life in space. Ensuring orbital safety and security is critical to life on Earth. Disruptions could greatly impact telecommunications, navigation, weather and climate monitoring, defense capabilities, and even global finance. The existing international frameworks on space have not kept pace with the increase in spacecraft and space activities, creating challenges to ensuring good behavior. Concrete efforts are necessary to harness the full benefits of space-based assets while averting cascading collision risks involving satellites and space debris.
Thank you for that. So that was the scene setter. And then that followed 3 moves. And as I was mentioning previously, each of those moves changes the circumstances on the ground. To just briefly summarize some of the challenges that the group dealt with. In the first move, a satellite is attacked with a cyber attack by a non-state actor hacktivist that throws it off course and risks collision with another satellite. And so the 2 operating owners of those satellites are needing to communicate with one another, but they have confidential, their algorithms for their space situational awareness are confidential. And so it raises questions about communication, about data sharing, and about both emergency response and greater preparedness. And I think data sharing protocols was something that was certainly grappled with and evaluated at the outset, and is something that remains an ongoing challenge, not, unique to space at all. As, our data platforms expand, it's an ongoing question. How can we develop standards, protocols, and agreements to be clear about the data that we can and should be sharing to enable greater safety and security? And so that was, part of that first move. In the collision avoidance efforts related to those satellites, then as the scenario unfolds, there's a risk of entering the space of and potentially colliding with the International Space Station, where an international crew is on board. And that then also certainly heightens the stakes, but also really brings into resolution not only the risk to personal and human safety, but also the need for international collaboration. And you think of, those who are on the International Space Station from, the US, Russia, Europe, Japan, elsewhere, the need to really cooperate. And even amid ongoing geopolitical dynamics, the need to have clear communication strategies, points of contact, and others that are vital. And so as it unfolds, there's each team, which is how this is organized, and all those who are participating are playing a specific role, either a state, non-state actor, or organization from the private sector or civil society, are really trying to respond. Who are we going to speak to? What can we leverage, and what's in place that can be drawn upon? And that's related to situational awareness, risk thresholds, which may or may not be different. What are the standards, and how can we collectively also protect those satellites and other space infrastructure that is related to communications, telecommunications, human response, commerce. And so those were some of the challenges that were grappled with throughout the course of the simulation. And another way that we design these is those who are participating are not in the role of their day jobs. They're actually assigned a role that is adjacent to, and that is very intentional. The reason being is all of these folks have incredible expertise and have been working in the field for decades in most cases, and very concentrated on their roles and also their respective responsibilities and constituencies. But we assign roles to other organizations so that they are forced, for lack of a better way to put it, to think through these challenges really through another lens. Thinking about them, what are the risks, considerations, stakeholders that need to be considered, and constituents from potentially an adversary or from another group. And not only does that create, a little bit of empathy or awareness about another party's constraints, it also creates an opportunity for innovative thinking. How could we think about this differently? What other solutions could we possibly create, design, and how can we do that more effectively together? So this was a 3-hour engagement, and again, thanks to all who committed their time to us. But Johan, having gone through that experience for the first time, and in light of the goals that Amazon has with respect to policy as you laid out, why a policy game? What were some of your takeaways?
Well, my personal takeaway is that it was a stretch because I was amazed by the level of expertise in the room, and it's good that there was such expertise. So it was also very exciting to play different role. I was, this is Chatham House, so I will not say what we decided to propose, but I was teaming with Rose from the Department of Commerce to play the role of a UN agency. And well, the first takeaway is that it's a very positive one because we managed at the end to avoid a major incident, and obviously that's a relief. But I was also very impressed first by the seniority of the folks in the room, and I am thankful to you, Alison, and to your organization, and to also Amber Charlesworth in our teams at Amazon for gathering such an impressive crew to really think about this policy game with us. It was very energizing, obviously, and also I mean, the main takeaway from my end is a positive one. It's that every actor, states, international agencies, but also private sector, demonstrated a true commitment to sustainability, a true willingness to kind of a true understanding of what the risks to sustainability were, but also a true willingness to take action in a responsible manner. And that was obviously a very positive outcome. But at Amazon, we are conscious that good intentions are great, and we need good intentions, but they are not sufficient. What is needed to succeed is a combination of good intentions, but also good data to know what the situation is, and also of good mechanisms to deal with issues. And obviously this is even more important in a context where I said it already, but there is such a broad variety of stakeholders involved. And from that standpoint, we identified collectively with the team through various, let's say, improvement domains or opportunities, right? I'll just name three because we have limited time, but one is obviously space situational awareness. That's great to be aware of where satellites are located or other objects, but obviously we have to share the same standards, and it's not always trivial. And also we have to share the same understanding of how algorithm works, and that's also a domain where cooperation could be improved. The second one that I would like to mention is space coordination mechanisms, space traffic coordination mechanisms, which we found could also be improved. And the last one, I will go fast, but is obviously disposal and end of life, which is kind of the name of the game. We have to find ways to really monitor and keep control over the end-of-life phase of any satellite that we launch. So in each of these domains, I think what we found was that it is essential to have a multi-stakeholder approach to deal with those issues. One single state, one single type of actor cannot find the solution in isolation. We need that kind of multi-stakeholder approach. We also found that, well, we have to improve information sharing and transparency mechanisms. That's something that I'm sure many people around this table already know. And also we need to build common standards, and this is a process that is underway, but it's kind of a permanent process. You know, we have obviously the UN long-term sustainability guidelines already as a great base, but we also need to rely on the best practices of the industry, which are evolving, which are progressing as innovation progresses, and this is well, what I took away from that really interesting game.
Thank you. You really covered a lot of the key points. You know, I think from my perspective too, there was just such rich interaction and an incredible energy in the room, I must say.
Definitely.
And that was really wonderful to see. And some of the responses, especially to the first move related to the cyber attack, these are very present and real risks as they relate to satellites, as they relate, to so many other infrastructural systems, and some of the questions surrounding standards of care and ensuring that security protocols are in place. Those are very real and also evolving questions, and bringing together those with operational cybersecurity expertise and others going forward will be absolutely vital to understanding how can those precautions and systems and security systems be put in place. And then, of course, questions surrounding liability as well. But situational awareness was kind of an overarching question as well, and how to increase situational awareness and understanding and communication with others. And I think at its very core, communication is very much at the central heart of all of this. And there are questions about who is the key point of contact if there is a situation that is evolving and risks that are unfolding and increasingly imminent. Who do you call? And who are those agencies, and who needs to be not only the first point of contact, but then the second? What are the agencies? Who are the individuals? And that's something that was illuminated as it's not always known. And there are also the dynamics in relationships. And so I think bringing together those from different countries, different organizations, and others not only help to think through some of these challenges, but also in real time are establishing those channels of communication to understand who are those who could be contacted for deeper communication. But as you said, so many other platforms for communication sharing, standards are needed, and that can only happen with greater collaboration, and so much great work is being done by the UN. The Office of Outer Space at the UN, Outer Space Affairs, interestingly, was sort of left out of the first part of the game, or the first 2/3 actually of the game, as participants were responding. But in the end, and in the context of, as was acknowledged, current geopolitical realities, the UN and the Office of Outer Space Affairs is actually a really important entity who is doing that facilitation of different stakeholders to think through some of these critical challenges, and plays an absolutely vital role in this process. There were a number of other outcomes and takeaways, some specific and technical and others more thematic. And our team this happened yesterday, our team is in the process of distilling those, and we'll be doing a consolidated report out. As was mentioned, this was a Chatham House discussion, and so a lot of the details won't be shared, but the key takeaways and themes will. And we hope that others can benefit from what happened in the room, the expertise that was brought to bear. And we really hope that these types of forums can complement and add to the other great work that's being done by the Net Zero Initiative and others around the world. But again, really appreciate those who participated, those who joined us today. There's more to come from us, as I said, with the readout. And again, thank you to Amazon and to you, Johan and Amber, for your collaboration and partnership. It's just been incredible for us, and we look forward to continuing the collaboration.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope so.
By the way, why is it that we don't do more?
It's really interesting that you say that, Chris. And I'm happy to hear that part of the culture is not just to either do that externally or with others. So, Saudi partners who are doing that internally with their own